everyone, it's Lara. Thank you so much for watching. I'm here back with another tutorial for an easy piece that even beginners can make, and today I will show you how I made this cute dress that I'm wearing right now. It's a very simple tank top dress with a collar, and the pattern that I have used for this dress is the pattern that I have created last week together with you guys. So if you missed that video, I will link the video down below so that you know how to create the pattern for this dress. The only piece that was not included was the pattern for the collar, but I'm going to show this in today's video. So if you want to know how I made this dress, then please keep watching. I have used for this dress my tank top pattern with several different marks and with additional pieces that allow me to create in total 16 pieces of one pattern. I filmed a video about that pattern last week where I explain how to make the pattern, so if you haven't watched it, I would suggest you watch it first so that you know what pattern I'm using here. I will link the video down below. So the upper part of my dress is going to be made of red fabric. I have already pinned here the front parts together, and the bottom part obviously is going to be made of the anchor fabric. And for the upper part I have used the mark on my pattern where it says it's the longer crop top. So this is how it looks like, and the pattern has already seam allowance, so I just had to copy all the outlines, and this is how it looks like. Now I will show you how I created the bottom part. Here is how I laid out the pattern on the anchor fabric, which is also going to be the bottom part of my dress. Just for demonstrational purposes, I laid out on the fabric also the upper part. So now the basic tank top pattern is folded, and here this is the additional piece for my dress. This is 10 inches long, and I'm going to add here on the bottom also 1 additional inch just to be sure. And of course I have done the same for the back part. Here is how I created the pattern for the collar. So I folded the front part and the back part of the tank top in the middle. I laid them out so that the shoulder area, which is here, would be aligned. And then I simply copied the neckline. And then I created this half moon shape, which is going to be one side of my collar. So in total I will of course need 2 sides, which equals 4 fabric pieces in total, because each of the collar pieces has an upper and a bottom side. And here I have the collar pieces, so I will make the upper side of the jersey with the anchors. And since I wanted to use up some rests of a white jersey I still had at home, I have decided to make the bottom part of white jersey, but you would not have to do that. You can use the same jersey that you're using for the upper part. I just don't like wasting fabrics, and whenever I have some rests of fabrics that I can use for a new project where it would fit in it and I could use it up, I always do so. And those 2 parts are the parts for the neckline interfacing. More to that in my video in which I have explained how I created the pattern, which is linked down below. And you will see also today throughout the process how I use those pieces. Last but not least, I have prepared the iron-on interfacing for all those pieces that are laid out here, which is the back neckline interfacing, the front neckline interfacing, and 2 of the collar pieces. I will iron the iron-on interfacing only on the dark blue fabric with the anchors. And if you are a beginner, this is how the interfacing looks like, the iron-on interfacing. So it's basically a fabric that is a little bit of a see-through, and if you touch it on one side it's going to be a little bit rougher. This is the side where there is some kind of a textile glue, and you glue it on any fabric that you want to make it stiffer. And this one is a stretchy interfacing, since I'm using a stretchy fabric, so you can see it stretches out a little bit, which allows the fabric to be a little bit more flexible than when I would use a regular iron-on interfacing. Next, I have pinned the upper and the bottom parts of the main dress parts together. I have said it probably about a million times by now, but if you're new to this channel, I will repeat it anyway. I always keep the pins at right angle because then I can keep them in while sewing through. That way the needle in my sewing machine wouldn't break. And it also makes it easier if you don't have to pull the pins out, because then the fabric pieces will stay in place. I have sewn the parts with a stretchy overlock kind of stitch. This is how it looked like when the parts were sewn together. I cut back any excess fabric. Here is what it looked like afterwards. Then I pinned the seam to one side. Then it looked like this. Next, I have sewn the seam to the side with a stretchy zigzag. Here is what it looked like once it was done. Next, I pinned the shoulders together. I have sewn the parts with the same stretchy overlock stitch that I have used also for the main parts, and then I also cut back the excess fabric. As a next step, I pinned together the neckline interfacing. The iron-on interfacing has been already ironed on. Here is what it looked like when I have sewn the parts together, and I have also sewn the seam to one side with stretchy zigzag. Then I ironed on the iron-on interfacing on the anchor print collar parts. So now I could start pinning the collar parts together, good sides facing each other. I have sewn the parts together with a straight stitch, and here is what it looked like. As a next step, I cut back the excess fabric with my zigzag scissors close to the seam. I made sure that I wouldn't damage the seam. Then I turned the collar part to the good side. I pinned the edge in place, and then I have sewn around the outer edge with stretchy straight stitch. Here is what the collar looked like when it was ready to be sewn on. Now we will pin the collar around the neckline together. I have already pinned one side on. So the first thing you have to do is to mark where the middle of the back and of the front part is. Either make a little cut or even put a pin in, or make a line with sewing crayon, whatever works for you. I like putting in a pin and making a little cut just in case that the pin would come out. Important thing is that the pin is perfectly straight. And then you start putting the collar on. What you have to keep in mind is that we will lose the seam allowance once we sew through, which will be about 1/2 inch. So I will overlap the front part just a little bit, so that when I'm done with sewing, which would be around here, that I would have here the perfect V shape. So I will put a pin in, and I will do so until I reach the back. I simply align the necklines of the collar and of the dress and pin the pieces together. And here in the back, I told you at the beginning that I wanted the collar to overlap for more effect. So this is what I'm gonna do here. I just have to make sure that it will be the same amount from this side and also from this side. So the best way how to make sure that you're going to have the same amount of fabric is to put them on like mirror images, put a pin in, and then when you align it, you align the middle with the pin, and then you know this is going to be the perfect mirror image. And then you have to put a pin in just to keep it in place. Then you can remove the pin that marks the middle. So this is how it looks once the collar has been pinned in place. There are two possibilities how to go on from here. Either first you sew the collar on. I will do that with a straight stitch because I still want to keep the neckline somewhat stretchy, because it's so much easier to put the dress on later. So I would first sew it on now with a straight stitch, then I would remove the pins and then put the interfacing on. If you want to, you can already pin also now the interfacing on it and sew everything together in one step. However, I find that I work more precise when I do it in 2 steps, but of course it's up to you. Now that the collar has been sewn in place, I have pinned on the interfacing around the neckline, bad side facing upward, so the good side of the interfacing facing the good side of the collar. And this time I have kept the pins on the bad side of the dress, because this is also the side that I will use for sewing through, since here I can see clearly where the seam is so that I could copy it precisely. So now the interfacing has been sewn in place, and as you can see I have also cut the excess fabric a little bit back. I've done that with the zigzag scissors, and then I cut around the interfacing to make sure that it is about the same width everywhere. What I'm gonna do now is to simply fold the interfacing in, and when I do that I will kind of pull on it so that the blue fabric stands a little bit over the red fabric in the back. I'm gonna zoom in a bit so that you can see what I mean. So if I would only fold back, then you could probably see a little bit of the red in the front, but if I pull with my index fingers a little bit on the red fabric and pull the blue in the front, then it looks a bit better. So this is what I'm gonna do, and this is how I'm going to pin the collar in place. So again, I fold the interfacing in, pull a little bit so that I can see more blue than red, or basically no red, and I'm gonna do it around the entire neckline. Now the collar has been pinned in place, and I will sew around the neckline with a straight stretchy stitch, but I will leave this little part out. So I will start sewing here where the seam is when I was sewing around the edge of the collar, so about here, and then I will sew around the entire neckline until I reach this part, and this is where I'll stop. Here we have the finished neckline with the collar. Everything is sewn in place now. Now I'm gonna leave it like that, but if you wanted, you could add a nice little bow. You could pick a color that you like, either a dark blue, it could be white, or red and white, just like I have here, or you could attach the ribbon simply like this, hide it beneath the middle of the collar. That would be also very cute. Although I think it would be even better if you had a blue ribbon here. But that's up to you. I decided to leave it like this because I'm not sure about the ribbon yet, and I might add it later. Now that the neckline is finished, I will also sew the sides of the dress together. So I will pin them in place as usual at right angles. I will make sure that the end of the red part is nicely aligned at both sides. Now I will sew the sides in place, but I have to keep in mind that I have here different shades of fabric. So for this part I will use white thread, and for this part I will use both red upper and bottom thread. So I have sewn the sides together. I cut away any excess fabric, and then the next thing that I have done was to fold the fabric on the bottom inwards, and I have sewn it through with stretchy zigzag. I used white thread because I've done the same around the collar, so I wanted that the dress would match everywhere. And then the next thing that I have done was to fold inwards the fabric around the armholes, and I have sewn it in place also with the stretchy zigzag, this time with red thread. And this is how the armholes looked like when the fabric was pinned in, or still is on this side. Here I find it easier to leave the pins inside like that and pull them out while sewing. For sewing through around the armholes, the best thing is to take down the drawer from the sewing machine, because that way I can access the fabric and the place far more easier than with the drawer on. The last step for me was to make sure that the collar will stay nicely flat whenever I will wear the dress. So I put the dress on, I took my pins and I put pins in several places, like I would say it was here, here, then where the shoulder seam was, and here in the middle of each of the back parts. And then you have two possibilities. You can hand stitch the color on those places where you have pinned the color on, or you can simply copy this line and sew the entire color on the dress, which is what I have done. So I will zoom in a little bit closer. So I have basically sewn through the line here around the edge, and from the bad side you can see only the seam with a red thread, so it's not really that obvious. And now the color will stay in place and it will always stay nicely flat. And after those last steps, my dress was finished. This pattern definitely opens a few other variations. So for example, you could combine different colors. So I took today red and the dark blue with the anchor print. I think it would look good if you would use white instead of the red fabric. Or what would definitely look great would be a piece where you would use for the upper part white and the collar, and the bottom part would be made of black fabric. Or I could also imagine a combination of pale pink and white, or for example pale pink and black. Whatever you like, there is no right and wrong. I'm just giving you a few ideas. So that was my video for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give the video a thumb up, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss any further videos. Links to my social networks are down below. I have several Instagram accounts. I also recently started vlogging in English against my better judgment, so I will link the channel also down below. And I will also link down below my series Sewing for Beginners, and then the entire playlist Sewing, just in case you're interested in more projects. If you would want to support me so that I could film on a regular basis, you are very welcome to check out my Patreon account. And that's all I have to say for today. I hope that we are going to see each other soon. I think next week or in 2 weeks there's definitely going to be another project, so stay tuned for that. And thank you again so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye!